Good afternoon. This is Uludeniz, Turkey. It's 3 hours west of here, and it's one of the most beautiful landscapes that you'll see in this entire country. I encourage you all to visit it this July for your vacation. It's a great example of where freshwater meets seawater, where sand and boats and nature all come together. What we see here is a very well-balanced ecosystem. So good afternoon, my name is Joshua Burke, and I'd like to introduce myself by telling you about my 3 roles. Number 1, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started businesses, I've worked with investors, I've asked for money, I've been slow in returning that money, and I understand the challenges that come from launching and creating a business. Number 2, I'm also an investor. In addition to creating and giving my time and my energy, I've put my own personal capital and my own personal money into businesses that I think are successful. But number 3, and the reason I'm here with you today, is my 3rd role is I'm a US diplomat. I work for the mission in Turkey. It's my pleasure to live in Ankara, and I work for the US Department of Commerce. We are America's innovation agency. And my question today that I need your help to answer is this: how can governments support the startup ecosystem? Now, I don't have the answer to this question, and I'm hopeful that I can gather some input and some of your suggestions to figure out if we collectively can help address this question. And what I'd like to do to help us move forward is to share 3 startup stories from entrepreneurs. So first is a new technology. It's been around for about 10,000 years. And this story is one that most of you are probably familiar with in this room. So in 1994, Hamdi Ulukaya traveled from Turkey, his native land, to New York to learn English. And what he did, in a couple of years, he started a feta cheese business. And a few years after that, he saw in a newspaper for sale a yogurt factory. He was very excited about the prospect of going into yogurt, except he did not have the money. So what he did is he worked with the US Small Business Administration to get a loan. A couple of years later, the first Chobani yogurt is on the shelves in New York City. 3 years after that, Chobani yogurt is the #1 best-selling yogurt brand across all of America. It's an incredible success story. And just last year, this brand new technology had over $1.5 billion in revenue. And so Hamdi Bey, when we ask him, to what does he attribute his success? Well, he responds, his grant and his loan from the SBA. So as we go back to our key question, what we can say is that governments can help support the startups and startup ecosystem by providing financing. Now, the next startup story is a company that none of you in this room have heard of. This company is called What You Rave, or Wyre. Now, Wyre was founded in my hometown of Chicago by a friend of mine named Nick. And so what he realized is that you as consumers are much more likely to purchase goods and services based on the recommendations of your friends and your family rather than based on a star rating of Yelp. So he realized that he started this, a personal recommendation network. Took a static contacts that you're in your phone and tried to create them into social groupings. Now, it's a really interesting story and a really interesting concept. However, it's a concept that was a little too complex. So less than 12 months after starting Wyre died. Wyre failed. And so we have to ask ourselves, is there something we can learn from this failure? Turns out there is. So Nick did not give up on his idea, but he realized he was asking the wrong question. He was asking the wrong why. And so what he realized was most important is that the problem was not recommendations and a recommendation network. The problem was that humans were not getting connected in efficient and effective ways. And so what he created from this was a second company called Cahoots. Now, Cahoots today has become the world's leading human relationship management platform and app. I mentioned earlier that I am an investor as well, and this is one of the companies in which I've invested. I believe there's incredible potential if we can connect humans in a more efficient, more effective way. And what you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is that this was founded in 1871, a location in Chicago. It's Chicago's premier incubator. So I asked Nick, you went from this company that had failed a couple of years ago, and now you're on the verge of success. And as an investor, I certainly hope that's the case. So to what do you attribute this trajectory and this change? So he answered this, 1871. As I mentioned, it's Chicago's leading incubator, but it's also a program that's funded in part by the state of Illinois, by the city of Chicago. And so what we can learn from these two stories, from Wire and from Cahoots, is two things. One, infrastructure. Governments can help support startups by providing infrastructure. 1871 has some of the fastest internet speeds in all of Illinois. Again, that's funded in part from the state. It also provides physical space. These are two things that are absolutely critical for entrepreneurs to be successful. And remember Wire, this company that had failed. So how can governments learn from that, and what can they do? What's the takeaway from that example? It's that governments can help support laws and create a policy that supports failure. We know that over 95% of new startups fail within the first 3 years. And it's important to distinguish that the startups and the companies may fail, but the founders and the people behind those companies have not. All they've done is learn and move forward. And policies, governments need to create policies that allow those organizations and those people to move forward. And so let's just revisit a couple of the ways that we've learned today. We talk about, we mentioned 3 companies, and one of the companies that we need to hear more from is your company. I don't know, as a government official, I don't know what your company needs. I have a little bit of an idea, but I need to hear from you. Your governments need to hear from you, and believe me, they honestly want to. Now, government has a role as well, and so we talked about a couple of things that governments can provide. Financing, infrastructure, support of policies, but what else? Now, I understand, as an entrepreneur myself, I understand most of the time what we hear is that government can provide 2 things, right? Government can do 2 things for entrepreneurs. 1, just lower taxes. And 2, just stay the hell out of our way. We don't really need you. But I think there's more to it than that, as we heard from our startup stories today. So myself and my colleagues from the U.S. Embassy are here. You'll find us in the hallways. You'll find us at the happy hours, definitely at the happy hours. So please find us and talk to us. Representatives from the government of Turkey are here today. And representatives from your governments in your countries are eager and wanting to hear from you as well. So please reach out to them. Talk to me if you don't know who they are. We can help influence government. A lot of the organizations in here already are already doing this. 500 Startups is a great example. They help advise governments on how to develop this ecosystem. So it's an incredibly important way that we can move the ball forward. So as you're thinking about what we can do, here's a couple of things that U.S. Embassy we're already doing. Now, are these the right things? I don't really know. So what I need to hear from you as well is to give us feedback on some of these activities that we have. So we have developed American mobile spaces throughout malls in Ankara. We have a great university program partnering with the Turkish Economy Bank. We have a social entrepreneurship initiatives. We have the Global Entrepreneurship Summit happening in June this year, and I'll say that there are more slots available for Turkish entrepreneurs than from pretty much any other country on the planet. So please take advantage of this program. We need to hear your voice in Silicon Valley this June. We lead delegations every year to the Global and Consumer Electronics Show. This fall, we'll be creating a women's entrepreneurship summit called Connect to Success. We also have a great program called GIST, the Global Innovation Through Science and Technology program. And we have every year the Global Entrepreneurship Forum, which will be starting this year in Ankara. Will be our first year we're doing this. And again, as I mentioned, happy hours are incredibly important to the continued development of our success, and so you'll see those in Istanbul and Ankara. Later this month, we'll be hosting a hackathon in Istanbul where developers will get together to develop solutions for Syrian refugees. It's the worst humanitarian crisis of our time, and we need the bright minds like yours to help solve this. And of course, we have an ongoing exchange program that we do every year as well. So I wanted to thank you, çok teşekkür ederim, for your time today. But before I leave, I want to leave you with one final landscape, one final ecosystem that I find incredibly important. And this captivating Cappadocia is not only a beautiful place to visit, but I think this picture really represents the Turkish business landscape. You have very well-established historic organizations with deep roots. You can also see from this that you have an uneven landscape. But rising above it all is you have these entrepreneurs that are floating in your balloons, creating new perspectives, new views, helping to provide incredible color to the landscape that exists already. So my advice and my suggestion and my desire for you, the entrepreneurs that are in this room, is please keep rising. Don't let gravity, don't let governments, and don't let anyone tell you no. Keep rising. Thank you very much.